The chapter begins in a briefing room at the capital of San Magnolia with Lena, Wenzel, Annette, the commanders of the 7 squadrons, Frederica, and pretty much everyone who is involved in the mission. As we know, the map of the labyrinth has 7 underground levels. There's a dome-like main shaft that is used to funnel sunlight, which extended through each level top to bottom, and from there, narrow subway tunnels and platforms spread out horizontally and vertically like a spider web. And to make things more complicated, the floor structure wasn't placed on the same axis as the floor above and below. It was built in a clockwise spiral around the main shaft. As we recall from the last chapter, the objective was to take the Weisel and the Admiral, located on the 4th and 5th level respectively. According to Shin's recon, both of them are incapable of moving due to being massive city-sized Legion facilities, which prevented them from moving in the underground labyrinth. So the whole area is technically a Legion unit. And the Weisel's nuclear fusion generation facility is located on the 7th level, which has a high risk of radiation exposure, which will pretty much kill anyone that goes on that level. But they don't need to go down there, as the 5th level is the lowest they need to go. The Legion's defenses was regiment sized, which is about 1,000 units. They were likely a combination of Amizers, Grauwolfs, self-propelled mines, and Steers, which Steers are an anti-tank artillery type. They also had 8 hours to complete the operation before they get blockaded, so they have to eliminate the Weisel and the Admiral within that time frame. The strike package will be deploying all 7 of their squadrons, each with a different task. Shin and the Spirit Squadron's task is to infiltrate the installation from the surface through the main shaft, with Rito and the Claymore Squadron. The Nordlicht Squadron, led by Berntholt, are to simultaneously infiltrate from the subway tunnels connected to the first level's southern block, along with the Thunderbolt Squadron. The Thunderbolt Squadron is led by Yuto Kuro, who is a character we haven't seen yet, but he is of a spinel race who has blonde hair and crimson eyes. The Nordlicht and the Spearhead Squadron will do the invading, while the Claymore and the Thunderbolt Squadron will serve as backup. Shiden and the Persimmon Squadron will stay on the surface as a guard, while the Lycane Squadron will serve as backup to them. The Lycane Squadron was led by a young Oriental woman named Machihi, who has black hair and eyes, and has an ivory skin tone, and is roughly a head taller than Frederica. Yes guys, we have a new Loli character. The final squadron, the Failing Squadron, will be doing an investigation unrelated to the main objective with Annette. The Failing Squadron was led by a dude named Taiga, and since we don't have a character design for him, I'm just gonna use Willem from Suka Suka as a substitute. Shin also mentions to Lena to not rely on his ability too much, because he is using it in a 3-dimensional environment, which Shin has less experience in compared to the 2-dimensional plane. So he isn't confident in his ability to pinpoint the legions in a vertical plane, and it doesn't help that they're fighting in a narrow environment. Shiden then calls Shin useless because of that, but Shin just ignores her as they still don't get along with one another. Frederica will also be using her ability throughout the mission to help out, but she seems to dislike Lena. I think it's because she knows that Lena has history with Shin, and she thinks that she's gonna steal him away from her. Kurna then brings up the idea of dropping a bunker buster on the legions, which is pretty much just a large bomb that can penetrate subterranean areas, which Lena turns down that idea because the bomb had to be dropped from a high altitude, so that it could use the kinetic energy to penetrate the defensive structures, which they can't use any bomber jets because the legions have air superiority, so that idea is out the window. Then Shin and Shiden get into another argument about who is going to defeat the Admiral first. Shiden goes, "Hey Lady Killer, let's have a race to see which one of us takes out the Admiral first. Your Spearhead Squadron or my Persimmon Squadron? Persimmon is supposed to defend the base. Are you going to desert your mission? You can leave that job to the old man's Nordlicht Squadron. Guard duty on the surface is too boring for me. I don't mind defending HQ, but don't drag me into your petty bullshit." They both ignored Berntholt. I can't let an idiot who abandons their mission on a whim handle infiltration. Sit back and guard like a good dog. Theo was surprised, as Shin was uncharacteristically annoyed with Shiden. Then Shin brings up an important question about the infiltration route from the tunnels. There are legions set on all the rails. They're hardly moving, so they're probably Lue or Steers lying in ambush. Do we have a way of handling them? Lena nodded coldly. I've thought of a countermeasure. At the top of Charité's central station's ring-like 7th line inner tracks, in the darkness of the tunnels descending into the first level, a Lue Legion unit was camping at the entrance, and the tight tunnels would mean the enemies would only come from one direction. Suddenly, a light shined down from the other side of the tunnel, leading to the surface. Something was approaching the Legion at a high speed. The Legion's sensors picked up on it, but it was too late. An aluminum alloy 10-car subway train with sleighs substituting the wheels, weighing over 100 tons, pushed by rocket boosters, rushed down the tunnel with lightning speed, which landed on the 50-ton Legion unit. Activation of all rocket sleighs confirmed, all underground mass shells launched, and the removal of the obstacle confirmed, Colonel Milize. It was Marcel on the Pararay comms in charge of the Vanadis, which explained in the previous chapter, the Vanadis is an armored personnel carrier which will serve as the mobile headquarters and central command for upcoming operations. Raiden, feeling the vibrations rumbling within the tunnels, groaned at Lena's voice, noticing it was stiffer compared to the 2 years ago back in the 86 sector, scrapping rocket boosters on abandoned, unmanned train cars and launching them down the tracks to barrel through the Legion lying in ambush, huh? Say, Shin, you sure this colonel's the same crybaby princess who commanded us back in the 86 sector? I think so. Lena, with her silver bell-like voice, ordered them coldly and stiffly to commence the operation. Let's go. As they arrive to the Central Station's main hall, Undertaker leads the way with 24 juggernauts, descending through the ceiling of the dome where sunlight was funneled by a transparent glass plane. Whereas they are dropping in, the squadron can not only hear the sounds of the legions, but they can see their shadows staring them down on the other side of the glass. They're down there, the fuckers. Yeah. Shin activated his pile driver and shattered the fortified glass to pieces. Undertaker and its 23 companions descended into the darkness of the Great Hall. The round tunnels extending from the surface to the first levels were completely dark, as Cyclops stood at the head of the column. Sheetan's Cyclops was a Night Ray model, which has the equipment for enhanced communications and radar capabilities, as her IFF device identified a massive amount of hostile enemies appearing within moments, as an army of self-propelled mines crawled up from the tunnels, inclined at high speeds. Finally, you show up. I've been getting tired of waiting for you fuckers. Sheetan's smirk was full of confidence, while her odd eyes radiated pure bloodlust. As Shin and his squadron descended through the glass, they landed into a circular hall that had a diameter of 200 meters that had a circular mezzanine corridor above it with a suspension bridge leading up to the corridor. At the further end of the wide staircase, the passageway surrounding the hall with a large tree-like pillar and an elevator in front. The juggernauts spread it out around the hall in a small group while they were ambushed by an army of steers, amizes, and growlwolves. There would be no Lue or Dinosaurias due to the cramped underground conditions. Undertaker, as usual, bursted right into the ranks of the legions, using its high-frequency blades to cut down the steers while examining the legion's defenses. Shin thought, all according to Lena's predictions. While Shin is taking out the legions, Theo fired his wired anchors to ascend to the mezzanine floor's web pathway, as self-propelled mines were coming out of the corridor walls. The plan was to have the juggernauts take over the lower level, and the armored infantry would maintain control over the upper levels. So if the infantry ran out of ammo, it would be easier to go back up to the surface to restock. But the juggernauts had limited amount of ammo they could carry. Shin, running low on resources, is now thinking, I'm really starting to miss Fido right about now. Sitting in a corner of Vanitas, with countless optical screens, Frederica noticed Fido going back and forth near the command car. Fido was anxious since they left him behind for the operation, but it was for the better since as the subway tunnels had cramped spaces and required a lot of vertical movement, which Fido was unsuited for. As Fido would get into an argument with Frederica, she reassured Fido that Shin would be safe, since Shin always ends up surviving every near-death experience given to him. Calm down, Fido. Stay within borders. Should you go down there and get shot down in the tunnels, you would only serve to block Shine's and the others' route of escape. Are you trying to summon such a plight upon yourself? Fido dropped its shoulders dejectedly, and Frederica smiled as she continued to flex her sibling-like relationship with Shin to Fido, trying to make a certain somebody in the room envious. Not to worry, he will return safely. That one will never let the legions have the better of him. But surely you know this, for who has fought by his side longer than you have. Things will certainly end without incidents once again. Oh, you surely are a well-behaved one. I, of course, understand just as well. I have been by Shine's side and fought with him for the past 2 years after all. A clattering sound, the sound of something falling to the ground, came from behind her. Upon turning around, she saw Lena bend over to pick up her clipboard. Excuse me. Her silver bell voice was thick with false calm, made to hide an agitated shiver in her tone. Frederica smirked, while Marcel and the other control personnel all looked away, intentionally plugging their ears, going, nope, nope, can't hear a thing. Frederica continues to tease Lena. My. Is something wrong, Colonel Milize? Does my and Fido's relationship with Shine bother you in some way? Lena grimaced as she remembered Shin and Fido had a squabble right before the operation began, and Shin spoils Frederica as if she was truly her younger sister, and Lena did not like that at all. It's nothing, she says, and I'm sure Frederica knows it's not nothing, as she can use her ability to see right through her. But of course, Frederica left her speaker on, and everyone heard the exchange. As we continue on in Chapter 3, there, as Cyclops and her squadron are taking down an army of self-propelled mines, they kept spawning from the darkness beyond the maintenance corridor, but whispers of artificial voices came out of them, trying to fool them into thinking they were children or injured people. No one fell for the trap, as Sheetan just laughs it off and continued to take them out using her rear-mounted 88mm shotgun. Cyclops then charged right into the army of self-propelled mines that kept crawling out of the woodwork. Spearhead's guys are still squabbling in the central hall. Let's eat all of these up before that headless reaper has a chance to steal any prey from us. Shin, with Undertaker's cannon dying out, finishes the final Growlwolf with a vertical slash. The hall was now silent and cleared out. He tells Lena that the main hall has been suppressed, as Lena orders the Spearhead Squadron to descend to the second level while leaving Rito and the Claymore Squadron on the first level. Shin asks Lena if she's okay, since resonating with too many people at once for a long period of time can be taxing. So to compensate, Lena is only resonated with the captains of each squadron. Squadron. It was the same for Shin, as he was also connected with the other captains as well, but Shin wasn't used to that, so it made it a bit harder for him. Then Annette interrupts their flirting, as it's time for her and the Failing Squadron to begin their investigation now that the first floor is secured. As Taiga, Annette, and the Failing Squadron head out, Shin gets a bad feeling about it, so he warns Taiga to be cautious, since there's Intextfleet spread thick outside. They were in an office building close to the tactical headquarters, one of many buildings that surrounded the station. The Federacy military had detected disturbances in parade devices present around this building a few months ago, and according to reports, there were no issues with resonance between squad members, but there was someone else connecting and disconnecting in an unstable fashion. Since the parade is the only method for capable communication under Intextfleet jamming, if they don't find what's going on, this could be a problem for them completing military objectives. Annette's raid device didn't show any abnormalities, same with the Failing Squadrons, but as she walked down the entrance hall, she peeked into a certain corner before falling silent. So you're the culprit. As Shin and the Spirit Squadron descend down the tunnels into the second level, Shin's odd feeling gets odder, as the view of the circular tunnels would seem to go on forever, and there are electric cables on the ceiling with all sorts of unknown wires. The lamps are all dead, nothing but endless darkness. As they advance down the tunnel, Shin starts to sink into his own consciousness, thinking about the things Lena and Annette told him in the last chapter. He didn't want to remember it. A sound of wailing reached his ears as there was a light at the end of the tunnel. He confirmed that there was no ambushes near the exit. As they went ahead, there was a pool on the floor filled with liquid micro machines. A brief recap of what they are: it's the same compound Shin's brother and Kiri used for those arms, but the pool was a generator for creating the core of the Legion's propulsion system and their artificial muscles. And deep in there's a conveyor belt with Legions moving along and suits of armor suspended from above for the self-propelled mines. And even deeper in, there's a box-like machine with a scanner, which is used for inspecting the Legions. Then all of a sudden, the conveyor belt and everything stopped. They're here. Shin sensed the Legions approaching. All units, switch ammo to APF-SDS. APF-SDS stood for Armor Piercing Fin Stabilized Discarding Sabot. I know they're gonna be used a lot, but my goodness, they could have named it a bit shorter. No one replied, but the heavy solemn sound of their 88mm cannons loading was all they needed to hear. 12 units to the left and 12 units to the right, behind the generator. Shoot them down along with the generator. What Annette had found behind the corner was a dehydrated corpse sitting inside a cramped storage space. It was dressed in the Republic's deep blue uniform with a quasi-nerve crystal on its neck that glimmered blue. They were a handler from the Republic, and based on Annette's observation, the person had died around the wintertime. It was now spring, and this was likely the person who was connecting and disconnecting in the parade comms, and she determined that they were trying to resonate while on the verge of death. But there were still some unanswered questions, as there has never been a report of someone trying to resonate before death, so this may be a first. According to theory, when people die, their consciousness sank into the collective unconscious and disappear. There's a possibility that the moment they died, those connected to them through the resonance will feel some kind of reaction. Annette suddenly has a flashback to her and Shin playing hide and seek when they were kids, and Shin was always good at finding her. No matter where she hid, he would always find her. Foreshadowing, maybe? Annette then thought about how this person has only been dead for a few months. As a large-scale offense happened almost a year ago, and the Legions don't take any prisoners, there should not have been any Republic soldiers that have died here several months ago. Standing on guard was Taiga and his Juggernaut talking to his squadron about how cool Shin is as a character. They suddenly get interrupted by a feeble whisper of grief from the distance. I don't want to die. As Shin and Spirit Squadron were in the Legion factory, the factory was controlled by the Admiral. They were technically in the stomach of a Legion. Every single machine around them was part of the enemy. Evading through the obstacles and cutting through everything, she knew where all the enemies were located, so Undertaker ran ahead as usual, as the rest of the squadron does their thing. The 24 Juggernauts went ahead through the fire and metal rain. They broke through the production area, invading the tunnels again. However, this time, the diameter of the tunnel was large. It was an 8-track railway. This was likely the location the Morpho was running to back in the previous volume. Everything was going as predicted, but Shin heard a voice of a girl. I don't want to die. It was coming from the surface. It was where the Failing Squadron was. There was a group of Growlwolves surrounding the Failing Squadron. He had to fend them off as they wait for Annette to run over to Aina's Juggernaut, another member of the Failing Squadron. Taiga turned his cannon to the enemy. It was a black sheep, as Shin called it, a Legion unit that used a degraded copy of the human brain that looped their final thoughts before death, without any memories or intelligence it had in life. It repeatedly looped, I don't want to die. This reminded Taiga of his own fallen comrades that said something similar. He shot down another Growlwolf charging at him, then he switched to a new target when it happened. From behind them, from the entrance where there was no enemies in sight, came a flash of light. Annette, who had been running towards Aina, froze in place. A red flash of blood spurted out of the Juggernaut. It had been cut in half. Then a second unit got cut after, and a third. Everyone was dropping like flies, as Taiga had no idea what was happening. The method of how it attacked was unknown. Only the sound of the wind being sliced echoed alongside the incessant wailing of the dead, and the screams of his comrades were heard. Shit. What is this? What the fuck is going on? Aina's been... During the one moment Taiga was distracted, A growlwolf got close to him. He detected its artificial murderous impulse, but that was all. The black frosted sheen of a blade slashed the edge of his optical screen, flashing in the sunlight. That was the last thing Taiga ever saw. Frederica stood up and kicked her chair away. All the color drained from her face as she saw what happened. Lena asked if she was okay. Frederica was in shock, as she took several breaths before managing to form the words, "The failing squadron was just wiped out." Down to the 8-track railway, a horde of self-propelled mines filled up the tracks, coming at Undertaker. There were far too many of them. Then a human figure approached him from a blind spot, as Shin pulled back Undertaker's leg, as there's no point of using gunpowder on those brittle units. But just as he was about to kick it away, it met his gaze. Shin reflectively jumped back, almost colliding with Raiden. Impossible, he thought. Then confirming the status of the pararaid, Shin spoke to all the squad captains, all strike package members. Cyclops was also in a battle with an army of self-propelled mines. She was about to take out another group of them until she heard someone gasping through the resonance. All strike package members, cease all combat and retreat. Shiden, don't shoot. Cyclops hopped back. What the hell, I was just about to take out the whole group. The timing was perfect. Assuming those are legions, but the ones I was talking about weren't. Huh? Then what else would they? Halfway through her words, she didn't realize the truth. The enemies were anti-personnel weapons the Legion had developed in humanoid form. However badly made, the self-propelled mines were only shaped like humans. So if the figures in front of her weren't the self-propelled mines, the answer was clear. The figures emerged from the darkness with staggering steps that made them appear wounded, just like the self-propelled mines that couldn't walk upright, but their silver colors stood out all too clearly. And Adularia's silver eyes stared at Cyclops. The Legion used their technology advantage to tirelessly develop and stay one step ahead of humankind, but they couldn't make a weapon that was too similar to a human. But you know, it doesn't hurt to try. So that's what's going on. She didn't swore under her breath. What the fuck? The white pig's here? And that ends chapter 3. I know I splitted this chapter into 2 videos, but that was just an experiment to see what feels better. So I think I'll be going back to 1 video per chapter to keep things organized, even if it does take more time to post. I want to take the extra time to ensure the quality keeps improving. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. And with great support comes greater content. So if you enjoy the video, like the video, and thanks for watching.